On the other hand, right, I would get told, well, so-and-so died. I still have that happen where people phone me up and say, so-and-so died, because I make the call. And then at night when I'm sleeping, sometimes I'll have to actually go and do a visitation. All of that's something else. But anyways, the point here is that even now I still feel it. I feel an embarrassment about talking about this stuff, right? Because it is, sort of, it's a thing where I can say this stuff and you guys can say, I wonder if that's true or not, right? And there's and so it's just what it is, right? Whatever it is what it is. You put it on the shelf, you say to God, bless it or block it. If it's crap, out. If there's something in it that is going to be helpful, well, leaven the lump into something that's mine rather than something this guy said. Anyways, and so I'm there, and Grandpa says, remember when you were a kid and he kept saying about what happened when you were dead? And I was like, yeah. And he says, wasn't it wonderful? And he grabbed himself, right? And he held himself. Wasn't it wonderful? And I know I'd never heard him say that word before. Right? Wonderful. I know I'd never heard him ever say the word wonderful in my whole life. Right? And so I'm just like, Grandpa's had the thing. And, he's going to want to hug me or something now. And it's a little bit like, having a pet alligator. You love him, but you got to be careful because he bites. And so, it was one of these things where I was like, oh, yeah. And so on one hand, it's an experience that people can talk about and then people can hear about, but no words ever give it justice. No words ever can convey this moment of coming out of the physical prison house that our body is. I'm sorry. This is why I didn't want to talk about this stuff, right? I tell you that our physical body is such a confining space that, after I'd received all this instruction about how this and it's really what in Hinduism it's called kama manas. In English we say carnal mind. So our human conscious mind is influenced by our subconscious mind. And so that when we make decisions at the conscious level that are based on our past experience that we have stored in the subconscious, that we are a result of everything that we have encountered mentally, emotionally, and physically in this life, right? That subconscious comes up as a fight-flight survival mechanism and says, this person reminds you of Cousin Ernie. Cousin Ernie was a jerk, punch him in the mouth. Now, you're not even seeing the person that you're talking to because you're projecting Cousin Ernie out onto that person. And it gets really crazy because simultaneously, just as this guy reminds you of Cousin Ernie, you remind them of Cousin Eddie, who they didn't like. And the next thing you know, these two masks of projecting onto each other start to fight with each other. And you are hostage, just as the other person's hostage, and you don't even know it. You think that those two projections on each other are your real selves. And you think that the violence between those two projections is real. And it is real, especially if you pop them in the head or you get popped in the head yourself. And so when we're taught out of the body, we're taught in these extraordinarily complex spherical glyphs. And these glyphs are so as I mentioned before, that the masters will actually though they're on the upper level of the etheric plane, so there's the basic etheric plane, or the lower level of the etheric plane, and then there's the upper level of the etheric plane. So the etheric cities, there's 14 cities in the etheric plane that are over the 14 seas and the 7 seas and the 7 deserts, is what the way it was put to us, or the teachings have said. They are on the lower level of the etheric, these 14 cities, and a golden age is already happening there. And this golden age is so that at the lower etheric, where these cities are happening, they are still in the process, even though it's a golden age there, they're still in a process of realizing themselves. And the only rule that's there that they have is respect. That if you respect yourself enough, you will not impose on another person. That's the only law in the etheric cities. If you respect yourself enough, you will not impose on others. I mean, it's a pretty simple law, isn't it? It's a law of self-respect. And so in the upper etheric, or in theosophy, they call it the super etheric, whatever you want to call it, is where the master's retreats are. And the master's retreats in the super etheric, the masters actually come in and they condense sometimes they keep their old etheric body like Saint Germain did, and even these other bodies. I won't go into Christian Rosenkreuz. Okay, so let's just go on, and we'll say that so just like we're here in our physical body, but our minds are functioning on a mental plane, right? So the masters are at that super etheric level, but their minds function, right, in what's called the arupa level of the Christic plane. And that's a 5-dimensional reality. Now, they can go on up into the Buddhic, into the Atmic, depending on whatever, but they essentially lower themselves down to the arupa level of the Christic plane, so that when they build these glyphs, it's reachable to us. And they build them in a 3-dimensional reality, because the etheric is a 3-dimensional place. And so we go there, and as I said, they're like Michelangelos. When they paint, because it's not like thinking, and it's not like writing. It's sort of like musical painting with fire. I don't know how else to describe these glyphs. It's like musical painting with fire. You've got color, you've got depth, you've got breadth, you've got sequential logic, but then you have this place where they can take the entire symphony, the 9th Symphony, and hear it in a single note. Right? I mean, it's not such an easy thing to really talk about. And yes. It is understandable. And so what I was taught in this time when I was a child, baby, was that each of us must learn to part the veil of this mist, this curtain, this cloud deck around us of self-concern, of self-centeredness. And it has to be done in such a way that it is as an unfolding rose. Because if you rip it open, then so if you're of the light and you have a soul and a threefold flame, right, then you're reaping your karma. But if you are not of the light, you can rip that thing open, because you're not reaping. Fallen angels don't reap their karma. They bank it for that moment when they have to go before the dais and the great central sun, before Papa and Mama, because that's who they are. You know, we say Alpha and Omega, Father, Mother, God. It's Papa and Mama, I tell you. And so, so what happens is that they can through their ceremonies rip the thing open. And because they don't reap their karma, they can just orchestrate if we crack this thing open before we are, shall we say, unfolded and matured to the thing, we then get overwhelmed with the karmic pattern that we have to deal with. And essentially, there's so many different ways to look at this. Essentially, to make it understandable here, it's what's called an undue kundalini movement, where the kundalini blows up through the spinal stalk into a chamber that you have not yet mastered. And suddenly, all of the stuff that is a challenge within that chamber, so it's like suddenly you're in grade 3 in school, and suddenly you have to go to grade 12 classes. It can be extremely confusing and all of that stuff. Anyways, and what was I saying? It was so there was the wrong way to do it, and then the jar head method, and then the third method that I want to describe is the one that they showed me, which is through knowing yourself. Okay, so it does seem like it's antithetical, because the problem with this cocoon around us is because of self-concern, right? So it's sort of like we're going to break out of this particular hypnosis of self-concern by paying attention to ourselves, which is, and so the methodology is, of course, to be able to start to know that what we think, right, is not who we are, right? That we are not our mental bodies and we are not our thoughts. Our thoughts are simply vehicles of interchange of energy, of ideas. But literally, people who are stuck in this sarcophagus, this cocoon, they have their thoughts and then they feed back on them. And literally, people think that the thoughts they're having are themselves. Now, this extends to our emotional bodies, right? That people think that they're their feelings, when in fact the emotional body is just simply an interface point, the way we exchange a particular energy with the world and the world back to us, the same as our thoughts. So we are not our thoughts, we are not our feelings, and then finally we are not our physical bodies. No matter how much my Achilles tendon hurts because I basically yanked it at Firehole, and when I jumped in, so all these young guys are jumping from this rock down into the stream, and so I'm like, having a midlife crisis, and I decide I'm going to go and jump from the rock like the young guys. So I go and jump from the thing. I go down, and my left foot jams into underneath a rock, and because I've got river shoes on, my heel just goes like that, locks in, and then the current takes me. So now I'm under the water with my leg jammed in a rock, my foot jammed in the rock, and it's dragging me downstream. And I have to grab onto this leg under the water and pull myself up and get my foot out, right? And so while I'm down there, I'm like going, looks like I might die. Right? So, it's sort of a been there, done that. This may be the one, folks. Look out, Elizabeth, I'm coming to see you. That's Sanford and Son, but it's also another Elizabeth that we're talking about here. Anyways, I was trying to do Danny in a bit. So, and so the point here is that that we have to basically get to know. The methodology they gave me was to define your way of being self-centered, the limitation that you incarnated through with the type of story you were told about yourself from 0 to 3 years of age. When we were born to our parents, we were spherical.